Hello, everybody. My name is Cat Oriel with Forbes Breaking News, and today I'm here with Kirsten Engel, candidate for Congressional District 6 in Southern Arizona. Kirsten, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, so I know we're only less than 2 weeks from Election Day. Early voting is already underway in Arizona, and although many voters already know you, may have already cast their ballot for you, I always love to ask every candidate on the show, please briefly tell me about your background.
Well, I am a candidate for Congress here in the swing district here in Southern Arizona. I ran for this district during the midterm elections, missed winning by one of the closest margins in the country. I'm a teacher, an educator, teach at the University of Arizona. That's what brought me to Arizona 20 years ago with my then infant daughter for a job here at the University of Arizona. And I first ran for elected office as a mom, fighting for funding for our public schools and our teachers. Served in the Arizona legislature for 5 years, fighting with colleagues from across the aisle on everything from education funding to working on our water issues, to working on jobs for people here in Southern Arizona. So I'm running again after narrowly losing before. We've got a ton of energy on the ground. I think people are really fed up with the extremism and the dysfunction that they've been seeing in Congress. They're looking for somebody with a practical bent, a bipartisan practical bent, and that's what defines my experience and what I'd like to do for Southern Arizona, from protecting reproductive freedoms to working on our water crisis and lowering costs.
Mhm. Another question that I always love to ask, especially women and mothers, is what inspired them to run? And I know you touched on that a little bit earlier about school funding. That was something that was important to you. But was there a moment, was there someone, because there's always a statistic, who knows if it's true or not, but it gets thrown around that women have to be asked at least 5 or 6 times to run, and men maybe just once by someone they barely know. But was there a pivotal moment for you where you were like, I'm gonna run for state government?
There was a pivotal moment. I was volunteering in my daughter's school, her public school here, and the legislature and our Republican governor at the time had just really been slashing funding for our public schools. Um, I was seeing it in my job actually at the university. But I had this moment when I was sitting in, one of those little chairs that they have in classrooms during one of these meetings of a volunteer board that I was on. And, the school could not afford money for a school field trip. I believe it was to the Science Museum. And I just thought, this is wrong. We are really robbing our kids of their future. And this is not leadership. This is not protecting our community and educating the next generation of leaders. And so that's what really got me off. And I decided, I can also bring my environmental expertise, that's my area, to the legislature. So that's when I decided to first run for office.
So from that moment in the classroom, now you're here a few weeks away from the election day again in your second race. And you touched on that a little bit earlier. You ran against Ciscomani in 2022, narrowly defeated then. What has changed about this race this year that makes you confident you'll be able to flip the seat back again this year?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that I think the voters now see that Juan Ciscomani is not the moderate that he has pretended to be, that he ran on being last cycle, that in Congress, he has taken extreme positions and he has voted and supported the extremists in his parties rather than being a moderate or even an independent voice for Arizona. And here in Arizona, we really prize independence, people sticking up for people in this district. And we see this in his votes on reproductive freedoms, a top issue here in Southern Arizona. He cheered the repeal of Roe versus Wade, and he's voted repeatedly to restrict abortion access, medication abortion, which really affects the women in our rural areas, and veterans and active duty women in our military. We have 2 military bases here. We have one of the largest populations of veterans, and he has been voting against their access to reproductive health care. And, it's very ironic. These are people who are fighting for our freedom, and he's voting against their freedom to make their own healthcare decisions. The border is also a top issue here, securing the border and fixing our immigration system. And when Trump came out and said, we have to keep the border a crisis so I can run on it for my presidential run, Juan Ciscomani kowtowed to Trump, and he rejected that bipartisan border deal, which is very popular here and would have been such a step ahead on a very divisive issue and one we need to address, from securing the border to fixing immigration.
Mm-hmm. And during the recent debate between you and Rep. Ciscomani, abortion, of course, came up. And I thought your response was notable. When he repeated that he doesn't support a federal abortion ban, but trusts women, you responded, I don't trust you with my healthcare. I don't trust you with my daughter's healthcare. We need to leave this to women and their doctors. So can you also further break down in Arizona what's at stake in terms of abortion? Because Arizona is one of the states that has a right to abortion initiative on the ballot.
It does. And this follows on Arizona, just narrowly missing having an 1864 criminal abortion ban go into effect. Our state Supreme Court ruled that it would go into effect. Four of those justices were justices that Juan Ciscomani helped choose for our former governor. And women were panicked and very, very concerned. We very, very narrowly missed that. But we do have an abortion ban in effect right now. After 15 weeks, abortion is banned with no exceptions for rape or for incest, only for the life of the mother. And we know that that has not protected women in other states. And my opponent is perfectly fine and comfortable with leaving these decisions to state politicians to make. And, imagine, a ban without even an exception for rape, forcing women to bear the child of their rapist. That is not reasonable. That is not respectful of women. I don't trust Juan Ciscomani with my health care. I don't trust him with my daughter's health care. Women do not trust politicians to be making these decisions. These are decisions that need to be made by women and their doctors.
And you also touched on the border. You would be representing a border state and a border district. So how would you work in Congress to secure the border and decrease the flow of fentanyl into the country?
It is a real problem on the border. It's a crisis. We have had large numbers of migrants coming to the southern border that the numbers have been so large that it's overwhelmed law enforcement. We have a real problem with drug smuggling and human trafficking. The numbers are really concerning. I've been to many events just in the past couple weeks on the human trafficking problem. We need solutions. We don't need more photo ops. And yet that's what my opponent has been doing. We keep on having these politicians who go off to Washington and then they come back with their colleagues and do photo ops at the border. That's not fixing anything. That bipartisan deal, negotiated by one of the most conservative members of the Senate, Senator Langford, an independent, our own Kirsten Sinema, and a Democrat. And it was endorsed by the Border Patrol Union, and yet would have been one that President Biden would have signed. It would have brought money and resources for boots on the ground, for more security, for fentanyl detection machinery in our ports of entry, which we know that's where the fentanyl is coming across. Half of the fentanyl in the United States is coming across the Arizona border. And so we need to stop it, not just scanning one truck out of 20, but scanning every truck. And we need to have those asylum officers. That's another thing that bipartisan deal would have done. So I would have embraced that bipartisan deal. Amazing that that was able to come together on such a difficult, divisive issue across the country, and such an important one, especially to this border district. One that, my opponent talks about a lot of the problems at the border, and yet he had the opportunity to support that And he rejected it. He rejected it right after Trump told him to. Let's keep this a crisis. We don't want to keep this a crisis. We want solutions on the border.
There are probably so many other important issues to voters in your district that we haven't even touched on yet. But one that I do want to ask you about is just democracy. When we poll voters, that's consistently one of the biggest issues to them in this election. And there was a lot of fear mongering and sowing of doubt, especially in 2020, about the safety and validity of the election, especially in Arizona. So, what do you think has changed in the past 4 years, and how can voters be assured that their votes will be safe and secure?
Well, it is certainly a top issue. And when I was in the Arizona legislature, I fought to maintain our democracy. I fought against measures, introduced by Republicans to suppress the vote and to feed into this lie that the 22 election was stolen. So that's a strong issue for me. I do think we've got very good state officials, from our Attorney General to our Secretary of State, that have put in place some strong protections for the vote. So I am optimistic that we will again have a fair election like we did in 2020. The most important thing, however, is that people really need to get out and vote. It is so important to our democracy that people are exercising their right to vote. So at this point, that's my message to everyone. Please, check out where your polling places is, et cetera, and make sure that you use your right to keep our democracy strong.
And as we've already established, Arizona is a very important battleground state, all the way down from the local level, initiative level, to the House, but also the Senate and all the way up to the White House. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, what are you hearing from voters? We'll start with the Senate race between Ruben Gallego and Carrie Lake.
Well, we know this is a battleground district in a battleground state, and the voters of this district could easily decide the presidency, the Senate, and the House. Votes here could flip the House. This could be one of the seats that the Democrats need to flip the House. So extremely important. We've been seeing just tremendous energy on the ground. The grassroots is really out. We've been seeing, double, triple times the number of people at our events that we expect. People have been door knocking, phone banking. There's a lot of energy and a lot of determination that we need to protect our freedoms. And we don't want the extremism. We don't want the lies that we've been seeing from the top of the ticket. And we need to get to work on issues that people really want action on. We don't want this dysfunctional Congress. We want a Congress that's going to help us with our water issues here in the West. We want a Congress that is going to lower costs for families. I've been a champion on that. We have issues with affordable housing. There's a lot of work that we need to get to work on. So people are eager to use their vote to put in people who are going to work for them and not just cater to the extremism that has really been hurting our country.
Lastly, I'm just curious about how the presidential race has impacted your race. Joe Biden narrowly won Arizona in 2020, but has Kamala Harris being at the top of the ballot at all changed the way you're running campaign or the way you see other down ballot races playing out?
We've seen it in the energy in the ground. The people coming to our events, there's been a lot of energy. Otherwise, the issues are the issues. They are the issues that we've been seeing for, several years now that I've been talking about. The need to protect our reproductive freedom, the need to address our water crisis, the need to secure our border and fix our very broken immigration system that we haven't updated since the 1990s. And people are struggling with high costs. Inflation is down, but costs have been high. And people are concerned about that. And I think that there's been messages from our campaign about how I've been a champion on that in the Arizona legislature, introducing legislation to tackle price gouging by companies and making sure we have a fair system that creates jobs especially for people in the middle class. And I think that's what people are hearing from the Democratic ticket in general, and we're focused on that.
Well, that's the end of my questions. Is there anything else you would like to add that we didn't get to touch on yet?
No, just that we have, I think, as of today, something like 11 days left. And so it couldn't be more important that people are getting their ballots in if they're voting by mail, or they've got a plan to go to their voting location next Tuesday. And let's return the country to a better place where we are all working together on some of our most important issues, and we're getting rid of this extremism and division.
Kirsten Engel, thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.